Welcome back to your mat. We're going to start today in tabletop pose. Take a few rounds of breath here, checking in with your balance between your hands and your knees. And then start to gently move your hips side to side, shoulders side to side, as you just kind of wiggle your way back into a child's pose with your forehead moving towards the floor and keeping your arms active and pressing the floor away. Let your forehead eventually rest on the ground or hover over, and breathe big breath from your belly into your low back. Pay attention here to your thighs, your knees, and your ankles. We're going to move into different postures to set you up for Camel pose, Ustrasana, which is a back bend. And so important to be cautious and aware of what your body can and can't do, especially on any given day. We'll start to move then. I like to come to my fingertips and just kind of take hips side to side in child's pose. Takes the pressure off of your head, off your shoulders. And then as you're ready, you can roll back up into tabletop, extend your spine, big inhale, open your chest. Big exhale, start to step your right foot forward and then bend your right knee. We'll start with a low lunge to prep your body for Camel, Ustrasana. Keep your fingertips on the floor just to begin, and maybe even come out of the lunge, pumping your hips back a little bit and then forward again. And take that as many times as you need until you feel like you can easily move into a longer stretch in your left hip, the front of your left hip. Maybe even wiggle a little side to side. And make sure you've got a nice solid foundation underneath your right foot before you come up, either hands on your thigh or hands to heart. And even there, when you do, lift yourself upright. Maybe again, it's a pulling back out of the knee bend and then getting back into it just a couple times to settle into the front of your right hip. Once you're there, once you're comfortable, really press down into the center of your right heel. Open your chest. Try to smooth out your shoulder blades on your back. And you can definitely use your hands on your thigh to kind of press your heart up to the ceiling a little bit more. Be careful with the back bend. Don't take it too deep. Drive your right sit bone under, pull it under and behind your right knee, and then really press down into that right heel. Think about lifting the left hip forward and up. All right, and then take your left hand to the floor for a twist. You can keep your right hand on your right thigh just to gently ease into the twist. Leaning into your left hand, avoid your left shoulder coming up and crunching into your ear. So keep the upper left neck area long and the upper back trapezius area spaced out. I'm going to walk off a little farther to the left edge, so way off the mat, and then lean into a bit more of a back bend in the twist. And if this is too intense for your left hand to be flat, you can always come to your fingertips or place a block under your hand. And then I'm going to add in a quadricep stretch. I'm going to start to test it out first, bending the left knee a couple times. Make sure your hamstrings don't cramp up. And then you can start to take your right hand back to your left foot and then open up even more. So spiraling open here. Your right foot might need to walk forward a little bit or out to the side just to make some space for the head of the femur to rotate in the hips. I'm going to take this a step deeper into a forward bend, and you're welcome to stay in that back bend. So instead of opening up, I'm going to take my right shoulder down now inside of my right knee, and at this point I do need to walk my right foot forward. It's too far back. We're not really focusing on bending the right elbow and pulling the left heel in. The forward bending motion is going to create the deeper hamstring or quadriceps stretch on the left thigh. So the front of the left thigh, you're stretching, and the forward bend is what's increasing that intensity. So if this is too much, go back into the heart opening. I'm going to take one more big breath here. Slowly release that back foot. And you can come back up into a tabletop position as you're ready. Right knee comes back next to your left knee. Flatten those palms out. One big breath here. Inhale, open your chest. Little cow stretch. And then when you exhale, start to round your spine out. And again, just start to wiggle your way back into a child's pose with your hips and your shoulders just kind of wiggling side to side. Eventually letting your hips settle down towards your heels. And again, your forehead towards the floor. Press your arms straight forward and relax your low back here. Another big round of breath. And when you're ready, we're going to come up and get that second side in. But between sides, we'll take just a bit of a back bend on the floor. So as you inhale, come up into tabletop pose. And then start to slowly lower down to your thighs and then your hips. And bend your elbows until you can lower down just to a comfortable back bend. And I like to come down all the way to the belly. Resituate the hands if they felt out of whack or out of line. So mine just moved back slightly. And then inhale, press back up so you can feel your back muscles engage. Lift your chin, lift your chest. Take another breath here if it's available. If it feels like you can't breathe, move back into tabletop. And when you're ready, exhale, right back into table. Inhale, open your chest, little cow stretch. And then on your exhale, start to pull that left knee into your chest and step your left foot up to the top of your mat for a low lunge on side 2. Again, start with gentle movements. Maybe you need to back off the knee bend and then rebend into it. Feel your left shin mostly vertical, and it is okay if the left knee goes beyond your left toes here. That will produce a deeper stretch in the front of your right hip. Since it's not such a weight-bearing leg, it's okay for the left knee to go beyond the ankle. And keep your hands on the floor until you feel like it's a good idea for you to lift your head up. Once you start to lift your torso up over your hips, you are going to put more of a stretch and more tensioning on the front of that right hip. So again, once you get into an upright position, maybe you need to back off and re-deepen using your breath to just coax your body into these stretches. Stretch back with your right toes, and then again, lift your chest. Think about your shoulder blades on your back, flattening out and pressing your chest up to the ceiling. And then again, you want to squeeze that left sit bone under and the right hip bone forward and up. So the back of the left sit bone draws under the front of your right hip forward and up to the ceiling. So it's not a squaring of the hips, more of a hugging in of the hips towards your belly button, towards your spine. Keep your left leg really strong here. And then we're going to move into that twist in just a moment. So as you're ready, you can start to take your right hand down to the floor and set your right hand under your shoulder, and then just start with an easy twist. So again, keep that left knee pointing straight forward and that left sit bone driving down. And let your head just go where it easily goes. So if you want to look down, if you want to look out to the side of the room, up to the ceiling. And then as you're ready, you can start to walk your right hand off the edge of your mat over into more of a back bend. And be careful here not to push your left knee away from you. If you're going to press down on the knee for a little leverage or just even a little reference to where you should be as you're moving away from your midline, then press the left knee forward instead of out away from you. So once you start to move away from the midline of your body, from your axis, you kind of can lose that frame of mind or that reference point or that spatial awareness. So try not to let it swing out. And then testing out your back hamstring. So the right leg now, you can give the knee a couple of bends. And as long as your hamstring's not cramping and it doesn't hurt your right knee, you can start to take your left hand over to the right foot. Here again, maybe you need to move your left foot forward just to make more space for that left thigh or the right thigh to get longer. So you don't want to be kneeling on the front of your right knee when you pull that foot up for a quad stretch. It's going to hurt the knee. So even if you need a blanket or a pillow here, it's a good idea. All right, so now I'm going to walk this forward into a bow where I'm going to now increase the stretch on my back thigh. And then I'm going to take it a step deeper down to the elbow. Mostly just because my wrist was starting to get a little tingly. My hand was starting to get a little tingly from hyperextending that elbow. So I just wanted to come down to my forearm to give the wrist a break. But that does make this quad stretch even deeper, so be careful of that. Maybe a block under your hand or a block under your elbow would be a good kind of in-between place to come to. The more you bow your head and tuck your chin, you're going to feel an additional stretch on the front of the right hip. All right, slowly give that foot back to the floor. Let your right foot come back to the floor. Take your hands back down. And then stepping right back into your tabletop pose. Knees next to each other. A little sway side to side. And again, just slowly inching your way back into child's pose, balasana. A little wiggle on the way if it feels good. Let your head rest either on a block or on the floor and stretch your arms forward. This is a good place to give your wrists a break if they were tired from leaning on them so much. You can flip your palms up. All right, I'm going to come up to hero pose. So when you're ready, you can come up into a seated position with your knees together, pointing straight forward, your heels apart, sitting between your feet. Your outer hips are going to come down in between your arches. And if that's too intense on your knees, place a block underneath your hips or a couple of pillows. Let your hands simply rest on your thighs and take the back of your head over the back of your hips. You might feel like you're leaning forward a little bit, or you might not even notice you're leaning forward. So it might not feel like it. So you might need to lean back and forward to find the midpoint. At any point, if this hurts your knees or your ankles, come up to tabletop and stretch out your legs and then try to get back into it. See if you can just focus on your breath here for a few moments, letting the fronts of those knees, tops of your thighs, and the fronts of your ankles open up as a preparation for camel. And then when you're ready, back into tabletop, hands and knees. And then stick your left leg out to the side of the room. I'm going to come up into a kneeling position for gate, Padagasana. Turn your left toes to point away from your right knee and see if you can stretch that left foot down to the floor. Slide your left hand down your left leg and open your right side as you lean out over your left leg, stretching overhead with your right arm. Keep your left hip pressing forward and your right knee pressing down. So you shouldn't feel the right hip turning in, just like that lunge, feel the right hip lifting up and turning forward. With your inhale, lift yourself back up using your right side core. Take your hands back down and swing that left leg all the way over to the right side of your mat. And then look over your right shoulder to your left foot for a little counter stretch. And then when you're ready, you can come up out of that, back into tabletop, second side gate pose. Take your right foot out to the side, balancing on that left knee. Inhale, lift yourself up to kneeling, and then turn your right toes away from your left knee. Left arm stretches up and overhead as you slide your right hand down your right leg. Again, try not to let your left hip fall back or turn in. So keep your left toes pointing straight back behind your left knee. Keep your left hip pressing forward and lifting up to the ceiling. And then open those left ribs towards the same side, the ceiling, as you stretch down the right leg. You can look up. You can take your gaze down to your right foot. So whatever feels best for your head, just really feeling the work in the right side and the stretch in the left. Okay, use your left side then core, work it now to come up. So it was just stretching and then you turn it on to come back up. Slide that right leg all the way over and around to the left side of your mat and look over your left shoulder back towards your right foot for a counter stretch. Keep the ankle flexed and all of those toes pressing into the mat or the floor. It'll probably be off the mat. This is a great quadratus lumborum stretch, a low back stretch. And maybe even into the IT band, you might feel a good stretch in the outer right hip. So you could do this at any point in time. It's a wonderful stretch if you experience outer hip tension or immobility. All right, let's come back into tabletop, then to press up and back into downward facing dog. Exhale. When you do, move into down dog. So take this when you're ready. If you need child's pose or if you want to take chaturanga, add in the things that feel really good to your body. Once you're in downward facing dog, you can just waggle your hips around a little bit. Get those arms to really strengthen up. So wake up those arms, press out through your triceps, press out through your fingertips. And take as long as you need to find comfort and grounding in downward facing dog. This is kind of like the like a base position, like check-in point, right? When you're ready, then lift your right leg, big inhale. And exhale, squeeze your knee into your chest, up your right foot up to the top of your mat. Place your left heel down for warrior one. Bend your right knee, and then inhale. Reach your arms up to the ceiling, stacking up your shoulders over your hips, back of your head over the back of your hips. Try to keep that right knee bent forward and drive down into your right heel as you press back with your left heel. Lift your heart. Press your arms apart as much as you need in order to open your chest and open your collarbones. So the moment I opened my arms, I felt warrior two soft, or this warrior one soften. So notice that any tension above will definitely affect the bottom part of the pose, which is the most important part of the pose. All right, take your hands behind your back to interlace your fingers. We're going to continue opening up the front of that left hip. We're going to take a bow into humble warrior. So take as long as you need here. And then when you're ready, exhale, bow down over the top of your right knee. You can start there. And if you're experiencing any cramps in your arms or any tension in your upper back, maybe just coming in and out of that mudra, the yoga mudra, which is the interlaced hands behind your back. And then you can soften down inside your right knee once you get all those tight areas or those resistant areas worked out. Now here I do let my hips kind of lift in order to bow down. I want to stretch. It's not about getting deeper. It's about creating space in your body. But keep that left heel pressing back down into the ground. Okay, slowly take your hands back down to the floor and swing your right leg back up into three-leg dog. Big stretch up. You can even open the hip if you want. Bend your right knee. You can take any movement that feels good here. And then I'm going to come back into downward facing dog. Exhale. So if you're moving through chaturanga, take your time and meet me here when you're ready. I'm going to move through plank pose. Exhale, chaturanga. I guess we'll all do it together. Point your toes back. Inhale, upward facing dog. And then exhale, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. So maybe you wanted to skip the chaturanga. That's fine. Okay, another breath or two here before the second side, just to get your bearings, to get your balance. Like I said, this is check-in. And then when you're ready, left leg, lift it up, inhale. And squeeze your left knee into your chest to step up. You can look and see where you're going to go. Place that right heel down on the mat. It's at an angle, so your right heel is the farthest point behind you so that your right hip is not opening out to the side of the room. It's just slightly turned away from front. Reach your arms up, and even though your hip is turned away from front, your right ribs do not. So rotate your right ribs to front, left ribs, and left knee. And then your left toes, so they all point forward. Right knee, right hip, and right toes point out to the side of the room. Creating a lot of space between your 2 feet so you can stretch the front of that right hip out yet again for preparation for camel. Again, interlace your fingers behind your back in your yoga mudra. Exhale when you're ready to fold. Bow down over your left knee first. Test out those arms. Make sure you're not hyperextending your elbows. Soft bend. And then you can bow down inside your left knee. And again, I lift my hips up slightly, but not my right heel. And you're going to keep that left heel driving down into the ground and still maintaining a bend in your left knee. Sometimes I just need to come up out of it, soften it, and then exhale back into it. Good. And then when you're ready, hands back down. Place your palms, and you can release your left leg back up. Stretch it out. Bend the knee if it feels good. Open the hip if it feels nice. Downward facing dog. Take a moment. Recenter, regroup, reground. And then on your inhale, plank pose. And again, you can skip this if you'd like. Chaturanga, exhale. Point your toes back. Inhale, lift your chest and arch up. Exhale, lift your hips and power back into downward facing dog. All right, downward facing dog, stretch. Take another breath or two here. I like to grab the edges of my mat. Just gives your wrists a break if you're getting tired of using your wrists. And I also have a really stupid mat that I do not like, and I don't know why I grabbed this mat, so I'm sliding everywhere. So that's a nice trick if you're sliding a lot in downward facing dog. Just grab the edges of your mat. But then replant your palms before you hop back up to the top of your mat. I'm laughing because I actually considered doing it, hopping back up with my hands gripping the mat. That would have been awful. All right, let's take a few moments here in a forward bend, Uttanasana. Once you get your forward bend comfortable, so you could bend knees, lift up higher, and then grab opposite elbows and just hang here. Soften your face, tuck your chin in, relax your head. All right. Inhale to come back up, nice bend in the knees. Roll up to stand, stretch your arms up. Samastitihi as you exhale. And just take a few moments here, as long as you need, to find your balance standing upright. So just like downward facing dog was a check-in point, same thing here. We're going to take a balancing pose. So I'm going to start by lifting my left foot off the ground and just checking out my balance. And then I'm going to bend my right knee to get lower, because what I want to do is reach back with my right hand behind my right leg for my left foot. So right hand reaches behind right leg for left foot. And then lift your left hand, press your left foot up and back. That will help lift your right hand. Be careful not to overuse your right arm. Your right triceps will cramp like mine are, which was then causing my balance to mess up. So you just got to sometimes get out of it and get back into it, which is probably what I should have done. Continue to press your left foot up and stretch your left hand up. They're working in opposite directions for balance. And then you can bend that right knee if balance gets a little shaky. So again, my right tricep started to cramp up. So then I tried to use my left foot more to push up instead of my right arm, but then my balance, the balance. So then bending the right knee will help you get closer to the ground and help with balance. So when you do want to release it, softly bend the right knee, get closer to the ground, and let go of that pose. So that was a king dancer, just with a little cross diagonal connection. Shake it out. Find standing pose, Tadasana. It's nice here, just a few rounds of breath. Maybe hands at heart or arms to your side. Okay, side two when you're ready. I'm going to take a big stretch up. Exhale, hands back to heart. And then I'm going to move on to that second side here in just a moment. But take your time. You please catch up only when you're ready. Bending my knees. I'm going to start to lift my right foot and take it over across to the left. So my left hand comes behind my left leg to pick up my right foot. Then once I get the connection, I'm going to take my right arm and start to stretch my right hand up to the ceiling. And then push right foot into the left hand to lift the left arm up. Keep a left knee bend as long as you'd like. And just work on that cross diagonal stretch. Again, remember your right arm and right hand are working away from each other to help for balance. And try not to forward fold with this, so try not to hinge on your left hip too much. So really reach your right hand up to the ceiling and lift your chest up to the ceiling there. Okay, so I was starting to lean forward way too much. Good. And then when it's time to come out of it, bend your knees, both of them, feet on the floor, both of them, and then press through your feet. both of them, and reach your arms up, both of them. Exhale, forward bend, Uttanasana. And take an extra breath here, shake it out. And then when you're ready, step back, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Okay, knees to the ground. And then again, Hero, Virasana. So find your support if you are using a block or bolster underneath your hips. Come back to seated between your 2 feet, between your arches. All of your toes point straight back. And then I'm going to move this into Supta Virasana, reclining hero. At this point, if you'd like to use something behind you, like a stool or a big pillow, or even like leaning back into a chair or a couch, that'd be nice. Elbows are fine on the floor as well. Elbows are nice on blocks. So set this up as you need. If you are coming into a full reclining position, reach your arms above head and flip your palms up. And then try not to push your hips down to the floor. So stretch your tailbone towards your knees. And you feel this almost like a bridge shape between your knees and your shoulders. There's a little bit of an arch there. And keep your knees from lifting off the ground and try to prevent them from moving too far away from each other. They can definitely move open slightly, but not to the point of where your feet point in different directions. So keeping your toes pointing straight up towards your fingers. If your arms are above head. So the toes point to the back end of your mat. Only stay in this pose as long as you are comfortable here. So the minute you start to feel pain, come up out of it, especially in your knees and your low back. Be careful of that. Mostly I'm feeling this in the front of my ankles. So that's where my tight spots are. So everybody's going to be different. Okay, coming up out of this, both hands to feet, elbows on the floor. And then your hands come to the floor and try to push up evenly. Try not to lean over to the right or the left and lopsidedly move up. Right here, I'm going to move into camel. So I'm going to keep my hands behind my feet, either on the blocks or on the floor, and then start to walk your hands up towards your heels. Now, if that's not going to work, we can walk your hands up towards your hips, but also take your hands back farther and your hips back over your knees more. You do not have to have your hips over your knees in camel. I think that's an awful instruction, and all that does is produce just discouragement and frustration in this pose. Lift your hips up to the ceiling. They should not be jamming forward. Okay, lift up from your heart, lift up from your core. Pause there for a moment, and then take your hands back down to the floor nice and slow so you don't get lightheaded. And then tabletop. Cross your ankles. Slowly sit back over your feet. Here I'm working out the back bend right now. So what I'm doing, this slow transition into this cross legs sit, is in itself a counter pose for camel. Basically neutralizing the spine, letting it come back to a neutral position out of that intense extension. Also, this is a wonderful place just to sit and feel the energy that was a result of that back bend. Okay, and then we're going to move into boat pose. So start to lean back into your sit bones. You can start by simply hugging your knees and lifting your chest up to the ceiling, and then leaning back slightly with your head. That's a wonderful way to start to work the core. Next, then you could start to lift your feet up. Keep your knees bent. Stretch your arms forward in the same line of your shins. And then if you'd like to straighten out your legs, lift your toes by engaging your thighs. Once you start to straighten your legs, this pose turns into more of a thigh engaged posture than a core. Front hip flexor and thigh is really what you're working in this pose, which is fine because they were just stretched. And again, this is a bit of a counter pose for your back bend. Now to counter pose the low back and recover from the back bend, we're going to lower it down to half boat. So slowly lowering down to your sacrum, keep your shoulder blades and elbows, shoulder heads off the floor. Your elbows can come to the floor for support. Tuck your chin into your chest. Look down towards your toes. Feel this now in the core. Again, recovering from that back bend. Slowly lower down to your upper back and hug your knees into your chest. Apanasana. And here, when you give your knees a squeeze, it's the final step of that recovery or countering your back bend. You could roll a little side to side here if you want to massage your low back. I like to take the knees apart and just take a wider knee-shaped Apanasana. And we're going to take this into a twist. So as you're ready, you can let your legs move over to one side. If you'd like to take your top leg out into a straight position, opposite hand comes down to that leg, wherever it can reach. And then your other arm is anchoring out on the other side of your twist. Not necessarily shoving that shoulder down, but just opening and anchoring. And just take a few moments to breathe here into this. Again, it's just recovery from the back bend. Recovery from your energetic practice. And then slide your knees back up through center. You can give yourself another hug. Use your inhale to pull your ribs back over to the ground. Rock and roll a little bit if it feels good. When you're ready, let your knees go off to the other side for your second side twist. And again, if you want to straighten out the top leg, you can. If you want to keep both knees bent, please do. But let the opposite arm anchor out. And let your head go wherever it feels best. So if you like to look off on the same side as your legs or the opposite side of your legs, it really just depends on you. Depends on your body and where the tight connective tissues or sticky resistant tissues are. And if you look off to the left, maybe it feels better. If you look off to the right, maybe it feels better. And stay as long in your twists and add in any additional stretches that you feel your body will benefit from and anything that you feel will help you prepare for relaxation. But when you're ready, you can come back up through center and give yourself an extra squeeze or move into any of those postures that popped into your head. So maybe you want a quick shoulder stand, headstand, and then practice out how you like. And when you're ready, you can come into a restful position. So set yourself up in any position that you can take a few moments just to check in with that connection that you've created between your body and your mind. And you did it all through your breath. So focus on that here and notice the peace, the quiet. But more importantly, there's a line of communication there between your body and your mind. And then your spirit, hopefully, too. So take your time to rest here. Connect those three things. And at the end of your practice, take a moment to bow to those three things coming together: mind, body, and spirit, and bow with gratitude and tell yourself thank you and good job.